We now understand the concept of marriage. We understand the scope of matrimonial property, and we now would want to take you through succession. Succession of property happens after the demise or death of a person. In this context, man and woman in the scope of marriage. So we'll have our senior Wanjiku take us through succession law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Hemley. Our senior, Madam Wajiko, kindly take us through and tell us what is succession and what is the process of succession. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll start where my colleague left and say this is now the process that begins after the death of a person. It is necessary to understand that once a person dies, they leave something. They leave property, they leave a family. And unless the court pronounces itself on what to do with that person's property, there is no other way to deal with it. And I see most people coming to somebody's house and taking their household goods. They take their cars, they take their suits and say, this was my brother, I'll go with these things. That's actually against the law. It's a criminal activity. It has to go through the process of succession, and that is what this is. Now, there are two kinds. When somebody dies, either they leave a will or they die without a will. In most African settings, people don't write wills. So we find ourselves dealing with a situation where there is no will. That is what we call intestate. I won't talk about writing the process when you have a will, because the will is almost straightforward. I'll talk about the process when you die without a will. That is what we call intestate. It is ideal, very ideal, to start the process as soon as you can, because you find that, and most of the time it's a man who dies. The woman is left almost destitute, because the property of she can't do anything with the property of the husband. So it's very good to start as soon as you can. The person is gone, gather yourself, just start the process. How do you start the process? There are some documents you need. The first one, the death certificate. The first one is the death certificate. The other one, which is very important, a letter from the chief of the area, whether where he lived or where he comes from, a chief who knows him. So the chief then gives the details of this person. Who is he? Who has been left? And when did he die? So that letter is very, very important. Get that, then get a list of his properties, and then who is inheriting him. How many children does he have? Now, who is inheriting him starts from spouse or spouses. Now, that is in a polygamous setting. We are Christians, we are not talking about spouses. So we'll talk about spouse in this case. So spouse, then follows children. So the inheritance will go in ranking, and the person who ranks first is spouse. That it comes to inheritance. Spouse ranks first. Children, in case he doesn't have spouse, or whoever is dead doesn't have spouse, doesn't have children, then we go to parents. Then we go to brothers. And I want to emphasize, it's only in case this person doesn't have a spouse, doesn't have children. That is when we go to parents and to brothers. But the law of succession provides the levels of ranking, even to grandchildren. That is in case where all this is happening. So that will end up you being allowed by the court now to use the property. You'll be given what we call a grant. You'll be allowed now to use the property of the person who has died. That is how the process starts. I will conclude by saying there are two instances. If somebody had a property worth less than 20 million, you go to the chief magistrate court. If it's above 20 million, you take that case to the high court. If you go to the court, if you don't want a lawyer, you can try and go to court and you'll be guided. It's a straightforward process. And yes, I will conclude there and invite comments from my colleagues.
Thank you so much for taking us through it. I will invite my colleagues to also hold on to their microphones and contribute to this conversation. What I would want to encourage us is first to understand that we as men and women have equal rights before the law. So both the boy child and the girl child have equal access to inheritance. In the situation where there was no will, in a situation where there is a will that is properly drafted for execution, it will be executed in accordance to that will. That is first. Second, I will emphasize on the order of consanguinity that my senior has spoken about, where we start with the spouse, the children. So feel informed. Be informed as of your rights. There are also issues where there are things that are perishable. There are cases where in a polygamous setup, in as much as we're in a church setting, we have to acknowledge that some of our members are in a polygamous setup. So where we have two or more spouses and there are perishable items, or there are needs that are immediate, we need to pay school fees. However, the property is under tussle or it's being fought over. What are the processes to follow? So there are many questions that come into this. Feel free to contact the Justice, Peace and Reconciliation team. Feel free to contact the Democracy and Legal Aid Center, where we have a pool of lawyers. As you can see, we have Wanjiku advocates, we have Kanjama advocates represented here, we have Kibicha advocates represented here, we have Njamoy advocates represented here, and many others. We are so many. We are a team of so many lawyers. We will advise you, and where need be, we will walk through the journey with you, through the processes from marriage registration, understanding matrimonial property, succession, and many others. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. That is JPRC. That is the work of the JPRC, and we have so much congregants to take you through, and tutashirikiana pamoja na tutaendelea sababu mambo ni mengi. We need to know. Thank you.